All right. Welcome to the show, Karina Pardus. Pardus. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. So tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and if you've had experience with any kind of mental health issues in your past.
Awesome. So I am a composer. I write music for podcasts, brand audio, and video games. And I've been a musician my entire life, and it's awesome. I love music. It's great. And then I am a wife and a mom of 3 kids. My oldest is 5, and then I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And I experienced postpartum depression with my first baby, but not until after I weaned her at about 14 months. So it was over a year after she was born. And I thought that postpartum depression happened sometime within the few months right after you gave birth. And so I didn't even know it was postpartum depression until it had been going on for quite a while. And it was really an experience. And then I also have a sister who suffers from depression and anxiety, and lots of friends that have mental health issues. So it's been a part of my life for a while, but only 5 years ago did I guess 4 years ago, a year after my daughter was born, did I experience it myself.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I thought the same. I thought it was something that would happen basically immediately. Baby comes out and you're like, oh no.
I'm depressed. No, that's not it at all. It can actually, postpartum depression can be diagnosed anywhere after 2 years, up to 2 years after you have a baby.
Wow.
And I didn't know that. I knew that postpartum depression was a thing, and I knew it was real, and I knew to look out for it. But after my baby was 3 months old, I stopped thinking about it. Just, oh, I didn't have it. That's great. I'm lucky me.
Right.
And that wasn't the case at all. And it was really, really interesting experience.
Yeah, it just kind of crept up on you, I'm sure.
Yeah. I just, all of a sudden, I didn't want to do anything. I would wake up and I would put a robe on and I would sit and I would watch TV all day, and I would get upset when my daughter needed me. I mean, she's a 1-year-old, right? She's going to need me. But I started just, never neglecting her, but just, again, okay, I guess I'll feed her. I guess I'll change her diaper. The things that she needs, her basic needs.
Right.
And I just thought I was being lazy, so I hated myself. So there was a lot of negative self-talk a part of that too. Like, why am I such a lazy bum? Like, I'm a bad mom, all of these things, until probably 5 months into it, my husband was like, okay, this is like a consistent thing now. It's not just you being lazy. There's something more happening. And when I realized that it was postpartum depression, I had a label for it, and so I could actually work on fixing it.
Right. Yeah. So, obviously it's something that you don't really catch the first second it happens. You're kind of in it for a little while and you're like, oh, this is this. Were you able to kind of trace back a little bit to see like exactly when this started and how it started to slowly manifest in your life?
Yeah. So when you are breastfeeding, it releases serotonin and all those happy hormones.
Right.
And so I weaned her pretty fast at 14 months. I didn't really ease into it. It wasn't completely cold turkey. Like, I would feed her first thing in the morning and then right before bed at night, and that was it. But even that only happened for 2 weeks before I was done breastfeeding.
Right.
And so my body just had an imbalance of serotonin to no serotonin, and then it just went into a lack of that. And so it pushed me into postpartum depression from that. So for me, it was breastfeeding related, I guess.
Right. So what was like the first course of action you took once you started to kind of realize that this was a thing? Did you start to do your own research? Did you go to a doctor? How did you approach it?
So I actually did not go to a doctor. Probably could have, should have, but
that happens.
I am a very self-reliant person, and so I was like, no, I don't need a doctor to help me with this.
Right.
Although I would not recommend that for other people. It probably would have been
Right.
easier to figure it out with the doctor.
Uh-huh.
But the first thing I started doing is I just started setting a schedule for myself. I found that if I had something to act on, it was easier to get up and do something, because my depression was manifesting in not having a desire or motivation to do anything.
Right.
I just sit and watch TV, and not even good TV. It was bad TV, right? I mean, it wasn't even enjoyable to watch. I haven't watched it since then because it's just not good TV.
Right.
So, I, just small tasks, because I knew that I wasn't going to be able to change it overnight. I knew it was foolish to expect to imagine myself all of a sudden being as productive as I wanted to be right away. That was just going to make me feel worse about myself, because I knew I wouldn't be able to live up to that.
Right.
So I started writing down, I wrote down I made a list of 5-minute tasks, 10-minute tasks, and 20-minute tasks. And then and then I set a time for when I would do one of those tasks a day. So maybe one day I was going to, just pick up the toys.
Right.
A 5-minute task I wrote down was get dressed, because I probably hadn't gotten dressed unless I had to leave my house. I wasn't getting dressed for probably 3 months. Like, it was awful. So, and every time I would do a task, I found a way to celebrate, because, do a little, hooray, I'm dressed. Like, I was my husband at work, guess what? I got dressed today. It's 11 o'clock in the morning and I got dressed. This is fantastic.
Right.
And then
celebrate the little victories.
Right. Yeah. And then slowly you work up to getting dressed at 10 o'clock in the morning. And then eventually right when you wake up at 7 in the morning or whenever it was.
Right.
And so doing the dishes, I mean, I knew that I wasn't going to do the dishes every day, and I might not finish the dishes, but I would set a timer. This is my 10-minute task, and I'm going to do dishes for 10 minutes.
Right.
And then when the timer goes off, I can stop. I accomplished it. Check it off. I'm awesome because I did some dishes when I probably done dishes for 2 months. My husband was really frustrated because he likes having a clean house when he comes home, but he was, helpful, and he would do dishes, and he would just be like, I don't understand why you can't do dishes. But then when we figured out what was going on, we understand. Now let's work on helping each other do this. So setting those tasks and knowing how long it would take and what was expected of me was really helpful, because then I was setting realistic expectations, and in between the tasks, I would still go and watch the awful TV, because that had become a habit. It was habitual, and I had to work on breaking that habit. Sometimes I would set a timer to turn the TV off when the timer went off. I wasn't always great at that.
Right.
Then my husband sat down with me, and he wrote out a list of shows that I was allowed to watch during my TV time, because some of the shows that I was watching were not good for my mental health.
Can you give some examples of like the before and after? Which shows were you not watching and which could you after?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little embarrassing, right? But one of the shows that I was just constantly binge watching was America's Next Top Model.
Okay. It's in the ballpark of what I was expecting.
Right? I mean, like, it's a love-hate show for me. It's a great show, but at the time, it was just really, really bad for me, because I was still in postpartum body mode. I was not my best, and I kept telling him, like, no, it's fine. I love watching the art of the photography, because I really do love that.
Right.
It's not about anything else, but then he started pointing out to me things that he noticed about how I was comparing my body, like I was body shaming myself based on this model show, right? Which is not healthy for any state of your life. Even now that I don't have postpartum depression, it's still not a healthy thing.
Right.
So things like that. And so he was like, okay, if you want to watch America's Next Top Model, fine, but only watch 1 episode a day. You cannot watch 7 episodes of America's Next Top Model every single day, Karina. This is not good for you.
Yeah.
And eventually I stopped watching that. I was also like watching the news constantly, which a little news here and there is fine, but when you're watching 5 hours of news straight, like it gets really depressing.
Yeah.
Because newscasters don't make money by saying good things that are happening, right? I mean, it's not the good news show.
Yeah.
So I was inundated with all the terrible things that were happening in the world, and knowing about that isn't bad, but I was surrounding myself with it, and I was immersing myself in that, and so it was not helping my mental state at the time.
Right.
So things like that, he would, he was like, okay, how about you turn on a show of Mickey Mouse, like an hour of Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, so that our daughter can watch it with you, right? Don't watch it for you, watch it for her, and then you can have this hour of like Charmed or whatever ridiculous show I was watching. Like, I watched a lot of Boy Meets World because it was very nostalgic for me in my growing up years, things like that. And then eventually he graduated to, he's like, okay, how about you start watching one movie? Like, instead of being on a TV show where it's never ending, turn on a movie, and after the 2 hours, you turn the TV off and you're done with the TV for the day, right? So we just set little goals like that, and that was really helpful for me to be able to be more aware of how my environment was affecting me and how I was reacting to the environment that I created. I was in charge of that environment because it's my house.
Right.
I was mostly home all the time.
Right.
And, there were, one of the 20-minute activities was go outside for 20 minutes. And I would actually set a timer for 20 minutes. And then I'd be like, peace, I'm leaving. Like, whoever's outside in our little court area in our apartment complex is like, oh, sorry, I have to go inside now because it's overwhelming to me to be with you guys for so long without an excuse to get out.
No, peace out, sunshine, I'm done.
Yeah. Like, oh, I gotta go inside. And one of my friends was like, why do you set a timer to go back inside? And I was like, I don't want to be trapped out here with people right now, which is weird for me. I'm very much a people person. I'm very extroverted. But it was nice having that. I mean, eventually I didn't need that excuse, and once I went outside, I stayed out until it was lunchtime or until my daughter needed to go inside for whatever reason. But it's just those little steps to take to get to that point.
Right. So that's a really, really strong breakdown of a lot of tactics that I've used personally as well, in terms of giving yourself kind of baby steps to go try little things and kind of realize that what you're experiencing is different from the norm, quote unquote, normal stuff. So it involves a different kind of treatment, to look at yourself in a different way, to allow yourself to, the doing the dishes was a really good example because I've had plenty of days like that even now, but I'm dealing with cyclical depression. So I go through mania to cyclothymia, which is mania to depression. And I'm recently, yesterday was horrible and today I feel great. So it's kind of weird. That's exactly how it is. It's like one day, like I go to bed with anxiety because I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to feel tomorrow. But a good example of it is the dishes thing, because I wake up, I do dishes for like, not necessarily an exact timer, but I kind of feel it out. And I'm like, okay, when this doesn't feel like it's something that that is like, when it feels more of a responsibility and starts to feel like a burden, that's you got to allow myself to be like, okay, I'll deal with this later, or set a priority for which dishes need to be done. Some plates, some, the skillet or something needs to be cleaned so we can make food later or something. Yeah. Giving a priority to make sure at least that's done, and then, mark it off. It doesn't have to be perfection, 100%, that sort of thing. And that's all of that is really, really great. Making lists and giving yourself timers, all of that. I can relate to even the going outside stuff because that's, I'm more of a natural introvert. So I go outside and, Molly, my girlfriend, we go out to the pier or something. And I feel like the second we go outside, like there's a clock ticking internally. And I'm like, okay, I'm not enjoying this anymore. And she's like, this is great. And sunshine and people. And I'm like, I just want to go play video games or something. I just need to be in my brain.
No, for sure. And I actually still use a lot of those tactics. That I developed when I was trying to overcome my depression. I still use them, even though I might not be in that same place anymore. Like I still set a timer when I don't want to do something. It's like, oh, I know how to deal with this. I set a timer. Woohoo! Done is better than perfect. And I use that in my art a lot when I'm writing music. done is better than perfect, because if you wait for it to be perfect, you're never going to learn, and you're never going to progress, and you're never going to be able to move on. And moving on is critical in art, with mental states, with relationships, both relationships that you want to improve and that you love being in, and relationships that you need to let go of. Moving on is part of that progression.
Right.
And with going to sleep at night, I like, because I actually had a really hard time sleeping when I was in postpartum depression. I mean, I had a baby, which didn't help.
Right.
But even when she was sleeping great, I wasn't sleeping great. And so I started doing some research about sleeping, and there's all the scientific stuff about no screen time before bed and things like that. But I didn't like that one very much, and I didn't want to listen to that, so I needed something else. But things that I found that actually worked were gratitude practices and mindful breathing. So there's actually a psychologist that I was reading her book called The Strength Switch. It's a great book. It's geared specifically towards parenting, but you can definitely apply it to your own self if you don't have kids. But it's really great because it talks about when we focus on our weaknesses, we don't fix those weaknesses. We just enlarge them in our minds. And so if you have things that you want to improve on, notice your strengths and improve on your strengths. And you will find that your weaknesses kind of improve along with it. And it's just a great mindset to have, like, instead of, oh, I'm terrible at this, it's like, how can I use my strengths that I know I have, and I have labeled them thus, how do I use these specific strengths to help me in this situation that I'm not feeling great in right now? But this person, she was saying that most of the time when you can't sleep, it's because your brain is so focused on all of the worries that you have. Like you said, it's anxiety, right? It's, oh my goodness, what is going to be happening tomorrow? Or I've got so much stuff to do. I've tried writing down a list of everything that I think I need to get done the next day to clear it out. And that kind of works, but only to a point, because you're still worried about whatever's going to be happening. And the best way to replace worry is with gratitude. Because you take something that you're worried about, and it's just like with fear. You can't be afraid and hopeful or faithful about tomorrow at the same time. Fear and faith cannot coexist. So if you are afraid of something, you need to find a way to replace it with faith, whether in a deity or yourself or your family or whatever you want to place that faith in. And so same thing with worry. If you have worry, you can replace it with gratitude. And so she does something with her kids that I've started doing with my kids, and that I've started doing with myself, which is fantastic. And she calls it What Went Well. So you name 3 things before bed that went well that day, or a way that you use your strengths. And you can do more than 3 things. I do 3 things with my kids, and then when I get in my bed, I just go until I fall asleep. And I think, what were ways that I use my strengths today? What are things that I'm grateful for today? And you go to sleep happier. You wake up happier. You sleep easier through the night. It's kind of amazing how it works. I mean, it takes practice at the beginning, just like anything, but it becomes easier and easier the more you practice it. Especially when you have a bad day, it's hard to find something that you're grateful for. But you can always find at least 3 things. Like, I promise, even if
Oh, I think I lost you for a second. Hopefully you'll be back. She did say that she was having some internet issues, or it could be mine. My connection is unstable. I don't know why that is. But it's to kind of supplement what she's saying. Hopefully she'll come back and just pop right back in. Is that essentially, there are sometimes we come across these things when we're dealing with extremes, and these are things that everybody can use in everyday life to practice a better sense of gratitude and reconnect. Hi.
There we go. Sorry.
It's all right. I was just filling in the gap while you came back. So.
Perfect. So yeah, even on a bad day, I promise you can find at least 3 things that you're grateful for. There were so many days that I was like, I only cried for 2 hours instead of 5, or, whatever it was.
Right.
I got dressed today. I had inner strength and discipline, and I got dressed, and that can be something that you're grateful for.
Right. Every little thing. Every little thing.
It does not matter how big it doesn't need to be big at all. It can be the smallest thing, but as long as it is meaningful to you,
right.
that is a great way to help calm your body down, and it actually sends signals to your brain. So just like anything in your brain, the more you do it, the deeper those neural pathways become.
Right.
And so the easier it gets to see gratitude. So even in the moment when you start having a panic attack, or when something terrible starts happening, your brain will automatically start switching to what good do I see here? What strength can I have here? Because you've been practicing it daily.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. I do want to kind of pull back to a little bit of the postpartum stuff, if you don't mind. Asking more specifically your relationship with your husband as a result of everything that's going on. Oh, I think I lost you. You froze, or you're standing really still. When she comes back, I'll ask her about it. I wanted to ask about how the postpartum stuff, and her connections with her husband, and stigma as a result of that. But to kind of, again, supplement what she's saying about sort of celebrating all the little victories, it's something that is important for us to do, even as regular people living day-to-day lives. I think she's back.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know why it keeps stopping.
That's okay. That's fine. I'm a host. I just go.
Okay, sorry. What was the question?
So I was going to ask you about your relationship with your husband as you started to progress and learn about your postpartum depression. It seemed like your relationship got easier as you were able to identify what was going on and be open and honest with him, which is something that I've experienced more publicly, or with my friends or with family, openly on Facebook and through this podcast, things like that. And it's been easier to have that conversation, especially when it comes to significant others. They could see you every day and just see you as someone that's just being sloppy or lazy. So how did that progression happen in like talking to him and learning about each other, or you and what's going on with you? How did that strengthen your relationship, if it has?
Yeah. So I think at the beginning, before I knew what was happening, I did a lot of apologizing, and I did a lot of faking it to try and make it not seem like I was as bad as I thought I was, because I thought I was being a terrible human being.
Right.
So he would text me when he was on his way home from school or work, and I would just, in a mad rush, feeling guilty, try to get the house looking somewhat okay.
Right.
And, I would place blame and excuses all the time. Oh, Shanielle it was really hard taking care of her today. She constantly needed me, which is not her personality at all, never has been. But I would place that blame on outside situations.
Right.
And it was exhausting. It was so exhausting to create those excuses. And so I eventually just broke down and was like, I'm sorry, like, I can't fake this to you anymore. Like, I'm just a terrible human being. I'm a terrible wife. I'm a terrible mom. I'm really sorry that I'm so awful. Right. And he was just so shocked, and he was like, but you're not awful. You're just creating this idea that you are, and you don't need to be that way. So let's figure out what's actually happening. And he was extremely supportive. I was very blessed that he was so understanding and helping me figure out what was going on. And so he just started checking up with me through the day, like, hey, on a scale of 1 to 10, how has this morning been? Right. And so knowing throughout the day what my scale was, some days I was a 6, some days I was like a -5 or whatever. helped him know what to expect when he came home, so that he wouldn't get upset if the house was a mess, so that he wouldn't get so upset if I wasn't dressed. Because it's nice for a husband to come home and see his wife look nice. Right? I mean, same thing when I worked. When I came home, it was nice to see John put together, and you're excited to see them more if they look nice.
Yeah.
So him knowing what to expect, I think, helped a lot throughout each day. And then when I would say, oh, it's not getting better, he would be able to remind me, no, yesterday was a 4 when every day before that had been a 2. So there are, ups and downs, but there have been ups, and that's the important thing to remember, that you don't always see for in the moment.
Right.
And so him helping me through that really did strengthen our relationship a lot. I mean, we've always had a strong relationship, but knowing that if we can get through postpartum depression without even considering divorce or separation, or without any name calling or anything like that, and only focusing on how can I help you now, has been a great thing. And it was really funny. At the time, I didn't even think about telling my mom or my sisters or anyone else. I never even thought about telling them, hey, guess what? I have postpartum depression, so this is kind of happening in my life right now. So I don't think my mom even found out that I had postpartum depression until 2 years later, when I was pregnant with my second child. And I was like, oh, I'm a little nervous that I might have postpartum depression. She's like, why would you be nervous about that? I was like, oh yeah, because I had postpartum depression. I guess I just never told you. Like, it was kind of a weird thing. But I think part of it was because I am really an independent person. I like being self-reliant, but John was just so supportive and wonderful that I didn't feel like I needed to go to outside support. So I think that, again, not something I recommend. You should tell everyone close to you, not just who is living in your house at the time, what is going on in your life, so that they can help you through it. And but I really appreciated how he took it day by day, because I tend to think of big picture easily. John, can I handle doing this for the next 3 months? And it's like, it doesn't matter, because right now, today, you're at a 4. Hooray! You're at a 4. It's bigger than a 3, right? It's better than yesterday.
Yeah, it's an extension of celebrating those little victories, and doing that together. Which, that communication has been the game changer in my relationship, and how, in comparison to how I've dealt with relationships in the past. It's a game changer to be honest about what you're dealing with, to your partner and to everyone around you. Not everyone's going to understand in the same kind of detail that you might explain from one person to the next. But, you can practice. You can work on a script, a base level version. You can almost set up like 3 different tiers of explanations for people, super base level, like, this is what I'm dealing with. Don't worry, I've got it handled. And then you've got something that's a little bit more detailed, and then something where it's just like, okay, I've got some shit to tell you.
Right, for sure. And I think that honesty was really key. And honesty is hard. Well, it was hard for me sometimes to just be honest with myself. There were days that I was at a 2 or a 1, and I really wanted to be at a 5. Right? You want to think, oh, I'm doing so great, but being able to take it where it is right now and say, this is okay. This is where it is now. That's not where it has to stay, and it's not going to stay there, but this is where I am now. And that honesty to myself was definitely the first step. Being able to share that with John and help him do it with me. And sometimes, I mean, because he was amazing, but there are days that he had a hard time with it, of course, where he's like, come on, I just really need you to help me out with this. Like, I'm in finals week. I can't do all of this by myself. And I had to be like, okay, like, today's been a really awful day for me. I'm trying to help. I will do whatever bits I can. I'm sorry if I can't get to everything. And, being able to have that on both sides, where we were both understanding, like when he couldn't help me out as much because he was under stressful situations with
Right.
school work, and being able to have kind of like what you said with that script, being able to, when we were out with friends or something, I could say, so my levels are dropping, like I was at a 5 when we were here, it's now at a 3, like we've got 2 minutes before we've got to go.
Right.
And doing that, I mean, I don't think I would have been able to come out of that situation and improve my mental state to where it is now at all without his support of, you know, you can do this, I believe in you, and we're taking it one day at a time. Like that was really important.
Yeah, that's huge. I wanted to kind of ask a little bit about where do you think that fear of communicating came from? Was it tied to the guilt of being a mother and feeling like I need to be on it and I don't feel like I'm connected to my child the way I would like to, connected to life the way that I would like to? Do you think it was just fear of all that stigma that you've maybe seen in other sources, and we're afraid that, you know, your husband and people close to you were going to feel the same or not accept that or understand that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. I mean, mom guilt is definitely a real thing.
Yeah.
And dad guilt, I think, is too, and that's not talked about nearly enough. Parental guilt is a thing, and it's often self-driven.
Right.
Like, I don't think, looking at it realistically, that I had to feel guilty from other people, but I felt in and of myself, because you want to do so great for this person that you love, that you created, that you're raising,
Right.
and you want to do right by them, and so you just hold such high expectations for yourself. Other people definitely can add to that guilt, but it can come in from inside also. I think a big part of it is just from previous life experiences where more often than not I came into the role of being the strong person in situations.
Right.
I mean, in high school, I had many friends pass away from multiple things, from car accidents to cancer to drunk driving to suicide even. And in all of those situations, I was the strong one for my other friends who were still there, right? And I felt that in my family. I'm the oldest of 5 girls. I just feel that responsibility. Not that I have to have that responsibility, but I've placed that on myself. And so realizing that I wasn't being strong, or at least I thought I wasn't, right? Realizing that I had to be vulnerable to the point where I had to say, I can't do this, and I'm not doing it, and I'm not where I feel like I should be, was a really scary moment for me to notice that the strengths that I thought I had, I still had them, but they were being overshadowed by an imbalance in my body that I couldn't control at the time. And so just being able to say, I can't, and it's not because I don't want to. It's just I physically and mentally can't. That was a hard thing for me to swallow at the time.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. It's fair. I can relate to that, being the oldest of my 2 siblings. I've got half siblings that are older than me, but basically the 3 of us grew up together. So I've always been the one that has to be the successful one, or the one that's got their shit together. You know, so for a long time, you know, I've been dealing with cyclothymia since I was, the earliest I can remember is like 8 years old, maybe. And it's something that I've been dealing with all my life, but then I don't think I really even realized that other people get depressed until I was like in my early 20s. And I started talking to other people, and I'm like, oh, okay, so I'm not just weird. This isn't just my weird personality, you know, manifesting in this Donnie Darko style of wanting to destroy everything. It's like, this is real stuff that's going on, and there's help, and there's other ways to learn about it. Now, what's been interesting too is that I kind of loosely bring up Myers-Briggs types. I don't want to hinge everything on it because it's really more of a prompt than it is something that I want to preach as an absolute. But you said you're an ENFJ, I think, in your past?
So. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Okay. Yeah, because it reads that way to me, so I just wanted to confirm that. But similar to INFJs, if this is something that you could maybe think about, it could help you. And we're going to have another conversation about this
Yeah, more in
off
depth
air.
with
But
that.
INFJs and ENFJs both, they think very strongly about the feelings of others. You're very concerned about creating a sense of harmony and making sure that everyone's taken care of. And both types, you lead with that feeling. And for INFJs, it's their secondary feeling. Um, for you guys, for ENFJs, it's so strongly in tune that you're often do it in a way that it's like almost self-sacrificing. And it seems that it's to separate it from the postpartum stuff. Just generally, I think there are a lot of types that give into a people pleasing sort of vibe, or wanting to make sure that everyone else is happy, but they forget that they are a part of everyone.
Yeah,
You are included in everyone.
it's so true.
So it involves taking care of yourself, because especially taking care of yourself first so that you can give your best to everyone. And especially in a situation where you're dealing with brain chemistry situations, you're dealing with stuff that is honestly 100% beyond your control, which is a huge thing that we're preaching on this podcast, is letting people know that this is stuff that is beyond our control. And these are things that people are dealing with. And again, I didn't know other people dealt with different kinds of depression for like a very long time. So I felt this sense of like, okay, we need to like spread this message, not message. or there are going to be people who are lost for a long time, like I am, or like other people are, or like in your situation, this is something that had you dealt with any kind of depression or anything before the postpartum depression?
Looking back on it, I can say yes. At the time, I didn't realize that I was.
Right.
And it was, minor instances. It was not long lasting, but it was there. But I just thought, oh, I'm sad.
Mm-hmm.
I should find a way to be happy and I'll be okay. Right. I mean, it was when I was in high school, and I didn't know any better, really. I mean, depression wasn't really talked about in my home very much when I was growing up. It became more prevalent after I moved out, when my younger sisters were, getting to that age and were noticing that they were struggling.
Right.
And then it became a more open thing. But when I was home and growing up, it just wasn't talked about. It was, you are in charge of your attitude, you can choose to be happy. And I think for the most part, for most human beings, that is very true. Right. And even with depression, we can still have control over our attitude, even if we can't control how it's manifesting from day to day, right? There's a difference between having a bad day because we choose to be grouchy, and a bad day because our brain chemistry is acting up, right? There is that difference. But I didn't think that brain chemistry had anything to do with it at the time.
Right.
And so thinking about, I think that a lot of times when I did come out of those small pieces of time in my life, that it was driven by other people. It was, they need me right now. Mm-hmm. And so who cares about me? I don't. So let's just go. Let's get moving. And I think reaching out to other people, I mean, even if they don't know what's going on in your life, being there for other people is a great way to help whatever situation you're in. There's some magical thing about helping others that makes you feel better, right? Mm-hmm. And that improves the quality of life. Right. And so I think that's why I was able to stay out of it more. But there's definitely something important about realizing that I am part of everyone, like you said, right? And mm-hmm. knowing that self-care is not just some wishy-washy thing that
it's not some spiritual mumbo jumbo.
Right, it's not. And it's not a weak thing either.
Right.
Taking care of yourself, putting a focus on self-care is a strong thing that needs to happen to improve your life and the lives of other people around you.
and it's not exclusive to mental health.
No, not
You
at
know,
all.
in terms of mental illness, rather.
Right.
You know, because it's something that I've been making more and more correlations these days to. You know, I deal with the extremes. So I go into mania, hypomania, which is like a lower form of mania, and depression, and I see the commonalities or the correlations popping up in other people who are seemingly normal.
Right.
I don't know their history, but for the most part, you know, burnout is an example of what happens in mania. Basically, I sign too many checks that I can't cash, you know, in terms of scheduling or ideas, or I just kind of go, 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 go. I plan things. And then once it gets to the point where I can't fulfill all of those needs, I crash. I crash in a depressive way. Whereas people do that, you know, every week. They're trying to get to Monday, or they're trying to get to Friday rather, and enjoy the weekend. There are lesser extremes of those things that I think are still useful for people who are not dealing with mental illness to consider in their lives. You know, celebrating those little victories. You know, setting timers for little activities that they have to do every day. Not watching too much. America's Top Next Top Model or Project
Too much
Runway
bad
or
TV.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Right. These are all things that we end up coming to terms with or learning or understanding through extremes. And what I'm hoping to achieve, and what you've helped me in this podcast to achieve, is to help people understand that it doesn't have to get to that extreme for you to take those things into account.
Right. Yeah, and I still use them, and it still blesses my life every day. I mean, even though and we all experience depression in whatever form differently from each other. Like my postpartum depression is very different from my best friend's postpartum depression that she had. We can still empathize with each other, but we don't know exactly what everyone else is experiencing. And taking
Right.
that empathy in mind, for yourself and other people, I think is probably one of the best things that I learned how to perpetuate even after that experience.
Awesome. I think that is a really great way to end.
Yeah, perfect.
So yeah, thank you, Karina, for being on the show. This was a fantastic conversation. Why don't you give everyone a sense? So we didn't really get a chance to talk about the music stuff. We kind of talked really heavily about the postpartum depression stuff, but I do want to give you a chance to promote your music stuff, and then maybe I'll have you on again in the near future, and we can talk a little bit more about music, because you saw my guitars early on before and got really excited. And we both make music, so I think it's something that we can talk about and even relate it to mental health stuff, because it's something that is fantastic for that.
It is. It definitely connects. I would love that. So my music business is Koi Compositions, COY Compositions, and you can look me up on YouTube or SoundCloud. I have a Patreon page if you want to support me there. And I am just getting more and more into video game style music and not as much orchestral, but I still do a bit of both, and it's really great. So I also have a Facebook business page if you want to follow news on there, or Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, all of it. So I hope to see you there.
Yeah, that'd be rad. I'll send you some of my stuff too, because I've been recently diving into like playing with chiptune stuff and
I love chiptune stuff.
Like drum machines.
So
my theme song on my other show, C Notes Media Madness, that I'm starting to launch soon, is the theme song is a chiptune type of track. So it's
perfect.
Pretty exciting.
Sounds great.
But yeah, we'll have you back on to talk about music stuff in the future. But thank you again for being on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Sweet. Thank you.